Hi guys, this is Mr. Tan, and today we're looking at hospitality operations, and we are still focusing on accommodation services, and now we're focusing on the food and beverages and the restaurant area within accommodation services. And today, we need to consider the operational aspects of food and beverage service to meet customer and regulatory requirements, which we've done in previous slides. Explain the operational aspects required of food preparation and cooking to meet customer and regulatory requirements. Again, we've covered that as well. Analyze the effectiveness of operations management practices in a range of organizational situations within the hospitality industry, and discuss approaches to achieve and monitor operational effectiveness. So the aims of today's session really is to identify food costing principles. So we're going to be looking at the cost control cycle, the importance of recipes, calculating food costs. Then we want to look at how we identify food pricing strategies. What's going to be your pricing strategy? How are you going to price your food? Understand the different methods, calculate the selling prices, and explore the benefits of discounting. So let's look at the food cost control cycle. So obviously, we need to forecast before we can actually, order our, raw materials and our ingredients. We need to know, how much we need to order, and in order to do that, we need to have some gauge in terms of daily or weekly forecasts of number of guests that we will have for our restaurant. And then once we've got those data, then we can start ordering the supplies. Then obviously we will receive those supplies and make sure it's received and documented and counted in the right way and cross-checked, and then we store it. And then we make sure that we issue the food for preparation, and then after preparation, we obviously cook the food, and then we serve the food accordingly to the guests on that particular day. So, when we're thinking about food, really we're thinking about the menu and what goes into the menu. But in order to look at the pricing strategies, we really need to look at costings. And if we are looking at costings, then in order to determine a pricing strategy from costings, we need to standardize the recipes and standardize the quantities and the amounts that go into them in order to enable us to correctly cost out a proportion of one portion of food for a given customer, and then we can add on our pricing strategy in terms of how we want or what profit we want to make from that food. So recipe standardization controls both the quantity and the quality of what is produced, and it also benefits from consistency. So it benefits from consistency, it benefits from having a standardized product, it benefits from quality control, and it benefits from costings, and it benefits from determining your pricing strategy from those costings, from accurate costings. So recipe standardization is very good. In addition to that, benefits of consistency, customers each time order an item is ordered, it will taste and look and smell the same, and it'd be a similar or the same portion size. Again, very, very important. I can remember one of the restaurants I used to like to go into was a Chinese restaurant based in Streatham. It was called Mrs. Wong's, and they did really, really nice food. They did their crispy fried noodles with a beef sauce on top, and the way they did the deep fried squid with salt and chili was quite unique. It's very similar to some of the top restaurants in London, but not all restaurants can cook deep fried salt and chili fried squid the same in terms of tasting to a good high quality standard. So this restaurant always used to cook it the same way for over 15-20 years, and then they changed hands, and now the food wasn't being cooked in the same way. It was not standardized because obviously new owners, new cooks, new ways of doing things. Fair enough, it's not a problem. But then if you've got customers who are used to a certain type of food quality standard, then these people may or may not like the way you're doing things. And if it's not done in the same way, then eventually they will feel that they're not getting value for money, and then they will leave and not come back. So again, very, very important that what a customer orders smells the same, looks the same, tastes the same, similar type portion size, and so on and so forth. Very, very important to the end consumer. Also benefits the restaurant in terms of selling prices. Could be based on cost of ingredients. Therefore costs will be consistent, and the financial targets are easily to achieve in terms of your if you think about our sales minus our cost of goods sold, cost of goods being the ingredients, gives you your gross profit. So sales minus your cost of goods gives you your gross profit. So your gross profit percentage, and then you take away from your sales and expenses of the business, which leaves you your net profit. But your gross profit percentage margin will be dependent upon your cost of goods, and the more your cost of goods, then the less your gross profit percentage margins. So if we look at the standard recipes, these should include the item name, the total yield, the yield in terms of the number of servings, the portion size, the ingredient list and weight and volume, and the preparation, the method and section, utensils and equipment that should be used. How long should it take, and what should be the temperature? What, if any, are there any special instructions? And what is the total recipe cost? So again, when we're looking at standard recipes, these should include all of these items. The recipe development process should include the observe preparation process, step 1. Step 2, to consider preparation details. Step 3, write recipe draft. Step 4, review, revise recipe draft. Step 5, use recipe for preparation. Step 6, to evaluate the recipe. Step 7, consider further revisions if necessary. And then step 8, in terms of implement, consistency, use the recipe. So this is what we're talking about in terms of developing the recipe process from steps 1 to 8. As a possible suggestion that you may want to implement within your kitchen. Advantages of recipes. Good advantages are accurate purchasing is only possible with calculated recipes. Important to know ingredients in order to meet the dietary concerns. Make sure that you comply with legislation in communicating the contents to customers. Can calculate individual menu item unit costs, and can determine accurate menu pricing. Very, very important. And you can easily then train new staff. Makes it easier. Issues with recipes, it can take a long time to produce. Language skills with different chefs. Waste of time if chef already knows them and they know their own ingredients and what they want to do, and so on and so forth. So it can vary slightly. Reluctant to publicize ingredients in terms of a secret sauce, and you normally find this with lots of different restaurants as well. They may have their secret sauce, secret ways of doing things, and so they may not want to let everyone know exactly what their recipes are on all the way that they're doing these things, because it gives it away. If you look at Kentucky powder, well, no one really knows what the recipe in the powder is, because the powder is just sent to the restaurants. The staff don't get to know the ingredients, and they don't make it on site. The powder is actually sent to those individual stores. And likewise in many restaurants in London or in the US, so many of these restaurant owners produce their own sauces, their own spices, and their own ways of doing things, and they don't publicize it because they don't want everyone to know what they're doing. So but then again, the question is, are these adequate reasons not to have recipes? I suppose, look at it, you can have a mixture of both. You can have some recipes for the majority of the foods that you're producing, and then maybe for your special sauces and special ingredients, then you don't have recipes for these, because you don't want to give away the secrets. Who would want to do that? So I suppose when looking at this, I suppose you could adopt an 80-20 rule. 80% perhaps provide recipes, and 20% where you don't want to give away your secret way of doing things. Here is a sample standard recipe for chicken turkey. And again, you have the ingredients on the left, you have down the center the quantity and the volumes, and then on the right hand side you have the procedures. And again, you see how detailed this is very, very detailed. And even at the top, utensils needed. Again, it tells you the yield at the top, the oven temperature, it tells you the baking time, it tells you the portion size and the portion tools, and so on and so forth. So the good thing is it has all the details here, and even at the bottom it has special instructions if necessary. So again, this is good. This is good because if you have different chefs coming in, you may have different chefs doing things in different ways, and if chefs leave, then what is the recipe? So you might need this just in case you might need to step in and do it yourself. And then we go into the additional details in terms of costings. So we look at the costings in terms of total ingredient costs of £89 and the yield 46 portions. And then we're saying to ourselves, what is the costings? And we're costing everything down. How much do we need? Amount of spaghetti, margarine, celery, onions, flour, salt, pepper, etc., etc. So again, how much do we need? And then purchase unit, and then the cost of the purchase unit, and then the number of purchase units, and then the ingredient cost, total ingredient cost. So in using this example here, we can see that total ingredient cost is $89.83, and we can see that there are a number of portions at the bottom, 96 portions at an average cost per portion of 94 cents. Okay, just less than $1. So again, this is very, very good because it tells you, and it's standardized, and it's telling you exactly what the ingredients are, the amounts and the costs and the purchase number of units and the total amount, and then the portion per unit, and then the number of portions, and so you can work out the average cost and then add on your selling prices depending upon your marketing position and your selling strategies. So product yield. So what do we mean by the product yield? This is the amount of product resulting at the completing of various phases of procurement, production, and or the service cycle. Lynch 2007. So we need to ask ourselves the question, what can affect the product yield? So various things can affect the product yield in terms of not giving us, the amount that we think we have. Includes shrinkage. When we've got an onion and we trim that onion down, so we weigh the onion, we've got a certain weight of onion, but we don't actually use the whole onion. We cut the front and the top and the bottom of the onion, and then we peel the onion, so we're going to have less of the onion left after we peeled it. Volume loss. And what about the non-edible portions? Non-edible portion size, and there can be a lot of loss due to poor handling and perhaps preparation. So here we've got AP and EP. AP stands for as purchased, and EP stands for the edible portion. So when we purchase something, we're not going to get 100% as purchased from that product. We're going to be looking for the EP, which is the amount which is edible, the edible portion. So that portion weight and amount yield after the trimmings. So there is often an amount of loss during trimmings and preparation, and this is the difference between the as purchased and the edible portion, the AP and the EP. So if we look at the percentage yield, then every food item has a percentage yield. To determine how much to purchase, we divide the edible portion by yield percentage. To determine the edible portion, how much can be served, we multiply the as purchased by the percentage yield. So the as purchased by the percentage yield. And again, if we want to determine how much to purchase, we divide it by the edible, portion percentage yield. So calculating the percentage yield. So let's just say the onion yield after peeling, so we've got 100%, and then the edible portion of the onion is 83%. So the question really is, what amount of onions is needed to be purchased to make 2 kilograms of chopped onions? So we're not talking about the as purchased weight, but we're talking about the edible portion weight. So, and we said again that we're 83% EP edible portion of the onion left. So then to make up 2 kilos, we would divide 2 by the percentage yield, which is 83%, which would equal 2.41 kilos. So even though we require 2 kilos, because of the edible portion percentage yield, we would actually need 2.41 kilos of onions. So after we peeled it, we would get 2 kilos. I'm sure that makes sense to you. Importance of control. All waste from preparation costs the business. It is therefore essential to control this aspect of food production. And again, it's so important to make sure that you're not cutting off too much of the onion. That you how many layers of the onion are you cutting off? You're cutting the top and the bottom, and then just one layer of the onion. If you cut 2 layers of the onion, then you're losing your edible portion, and then you're adding more cost onto your overall cost of the onions. So let's look at menu engineering. So according to Walker 2013, menu engineering, this is a sophisticated approach to setting menu prices and controlling costs. It operates on the principle that the food cost percentage of each menu item is not as important as the total contribution margin of the menu as a whole. So let's just review that again. So it says a sophisticated approach to setting menu prices and controlling costs. It operates on the principle that food cost percentage of each menu item is not as important as the total contribution margin of the menu as a whole. Okay. So now the importance of pricing. We know what the importance of pricing is. Food and beverage businesses have to select the best price to meet 2 objectives. Provide profitability for the business. If you're not in profit, then why are you doing this? And if you're not making profit, then maybe you can't pay for your costs, and part of your costs including your staff costs or your rent and rates, then you won't be in business if you can't make this sustainable. And the second objective is to contribute to a great meal experience for the guests. Setting the standards, the recipes, the right food preparation, cooking, the right food portions, linked to the right pricing strategy for that menu to meet the needs and expectations of your target customer, your customers in your restaurant. So how menu prices relate to successful operations. So if we look at the top, we can think about the standard recipes, which leads to the consistencies. And the consistency in terms of links into both the business, the restaurant, and the product costs, because you need to maintain those costs, because if you don't, then you're losing profit, and you may not even make a profit if you are spending too much on your products. And then on the other side of the coin, you have your customers, your guests, in terms of making sure that you maintain the product quality and also the portion sizes, because people know if the portion sizes are too small, then people know if they've been to your restaurant again and again. This links into the menu item and the selling price, which links into obviously the business side in terms of the restaurant profitability, and the customer side in terms of the value for the guest, the customer. This leads into success, and from a business perspective it leads into profitable operation, which is sustainable, and it links into the customer side in terms of a great dining experience and meeting the needs of your customers so that they come back and they talk about your restaurant, and hopefully other people come based on their word of mouth advertising. Factors that affect the selling price include competition, obviously, what your competitors are doing, depending upon the position of your restaurant and what type of restaurant you is as well. Food costs, labor costs, other costs, profit, and margin costs. So when we think about the selling price, we think about the profit and loss account. We think about the sales minus the cost of goods sold, gives you your gross profit. Your gross profit divided by sales times 100 gives you your gross profit percentage margin. Gross profit minus your expense of the business, which is your labor costs and other costs, and so on and so forth, electricity, gas, staff costs, gives you your net profit. So obviously, to get to your total profit and the percentage of your net profit percentage margin, then obviously all these costs need to be taken into consideration within the selling price. Methods of setting pricing. Now we're going to look at 4 different methods of setting pricing. So what should be your sales strategy? Competition pricing, food cost percentage pricing, contribution pricing, and actual cost pricing. So how are we going to cost it? And again, this also depends upon the type of restaurant that you have, the position of your restaurant in terms of how you're selling your restaurant. Is it are you looking for market penetration? Are you looking for the mid-market range? Are you looking to be slightly competitive? Are you looking for a niche marketing? Skimming the market? So what is your pricing strategy? But obviously it needs to link directly into the look and feel of your restaurant. That makes sense. So competition pricing. What is competition pricing? This is based on what others are charging, not really related to your own costs, and wise to pay attention to the competition, but not always. Competitors' costs margins are unknown. So again, it depends upon if you're at the lower end of the market and you're trying to go for market penetration and you're trying to compete, then obviously you need to be competitive. And you must be careful of going too low to make, going so low whereby you can't actually, make the profits that you need. So that's, something to be reviewed. But sometimes competition is not needed, where, you may be based in, a high market area like London, and, you're in Mayfair, you've got restaurants and Chinese restaurants in there, for example. And you're not going to be basing it on what competitors are basing it on. You're basing it on in terms of what you want to base your pricing on for your target customer. We've got food cost percentage pricing, and what we're saying is that we look at the cost of the food and then we say that we want to have 30% in terms of the cost of that food, or 50% in terms of the cost of that food. What is the percentage margin that you want to make on that cost of that food, which would give you your selling price? So this is one of the most common methods. It's a method of cost plus or cost based pricing, cost plus pricing, same thing. Determine a target food cost percentage, 30%, and the formula is, so you look at the cost of your food and you say you're going to add on 30 to 50% on for your food. In cost-based pricing, a lot of retailers do this in terms of their retail fashion for clothes in the main markets like Primark and Marks and Spencer's, where they will make a percentage on top. And that percentage, so they would look at the cost of those goods and they would say that they would want to make maybe 50% cost-based pricing, or 100% on top. So if it cost them £40, then they would sell it for £100, because you double it, say 50% growth, 50% cost-based pricing, 100% on top. So then you double it to make £80 times the VAT, because you have to add VAT as well. This calculation here in this example shows that calculations do not include VAT. So but you will, in terms of the final selling price, in terms of the majority of goods, you do need to add on VAT as well. You also, here's an example of a food cost percentage example. So here you have the menu item cost of £1.75, and let's say that you want to target 30%. So here we got £1.75 divided by 0.30 equals £5.83. So the selling price is £5.83. Here's an individual task here. So using the food costs from the recipes prepared earlier, calculate the selling prices. So, in terms of what would it be for 30% and what would it be for 35%. So we looked at £1.75 costs. What would be the retail price of that food at £1.75 with 30%, and what would it be where the cost of goods were 35%? So now we have contribution pricing. Contribution pricing uses a predetermined contribution per menu, item, or per guest. So we say that we look at the food cost and then we add on a contribution to that menu. So, what is going to be the contribution? And that contribution would be standard across all those different food items. So it would be that contribution for each guest or for each menu item plus the actual cost of the goods. And then we have actual cost pricing. And the actual cost pricing is then saying, used when a selling price has been determined before food cost known. So here you have the selling price, which is 100% of the selling price, minus the overheads percentage, minus the desired gross profit percentage, gives you your food cost percentage. So your selling price would then be minus the overhead percentage, minus the desired gross profit percentage, which will give you your food cost percentage. And this will be your actual cost pricing. So pricing strategy considerations. So pricing strategy considerations, is the calculated price realistic? Is the price competitive? Could you charge more for reputation, status of a dish, and marketing strategy, new concept, market penetration, price skimming? So I talked about some of these before. Market penetration, to looking at what your competitors are doing. Price skimming, going for the top of the market. I know when I went to a restaurant with my sons, I went to a restaurant in London, and when we went in, they sat us down. It was just before Christmas, actually, before the lockdown, and we went to this restaurant. They sat us downstairs. There was no menus there, and it was just a barcode. And then you put your phone on the barcode, and the barcode, came up with a menu on your phone. Now, in the menu, it showed you only the dishes. Didn't show you the pricing. There was no pricing there at all. And then, we had dim sum. Dim sum, for some people who don't know, is Chinese breakfast. It's basically steamed Chinese breakfast. And they had all these variety of different dishes, and the portion sizes were 3 in a bowl, quite small. But the products were unique because on the different types of dim sum, they had caviar. They had red caviar. They had black caviar. And the meal was very, very nice. The drinks were nice. The service was excellent. Everything was very nice. And for 4 of us, how much do you think the price came to? The price came to £230, which I thought was a lot of money. I thought it was a lot of money for just 4 of us, £230. But again, there was no pricing on there, and you pay for what you get. So unique experience, unique type food. It's not about quantity; it's about the quality, and so on and so forth. So when you look at that, then pricing. You're not thinking of you're thinking more skimming the marketplace, the maximum you can charge for the overall marketing concept of your restaurant. So again, the pricing strategy must meet the concept for your restaurant. Pricing strategy again. When is the dish being sold, promoted? You might think about special promotions in terms of happy hour. You might do meal deals for business people, for instance, meal deals which will have afternoon meal deals with rice and beef, for instance, and rice and pork as a meal, rice, pork, and a drink, for example. And you also need to think about your sales revenue versus your gross profit. Okay, discounting affects your gross profit margins, and again, but may drive sales growth. So you might, even though you're discounting your gross profit, you could actually get more sales. Therefore, you're reducing your gross profit, but it could lead to higher gross profits, but not really higher gross profit percentage margins. Not always about the gross profit percentage margin. So, we also have the discount culture. What are your views in terms of discount culture today? And again, I think it depends on the restaurant, where the restaurant is, who you're targeting, if it's business users, if it's special hours, if it's happy hours. It depends upon the time of day, who the competition are, and so on and so forth. So again, you may want to have discounts depending upon your marketing strategy and your pricing strategy. So in summary, we can see that we have identified food costing principles in terms of the cost control cycle, the importance of recipes and calculating food costs, and then we've kind of moved on from that, because we need to look at that first before we can move into pricing strategies, because we need to know before we can price something, we need to know what the cost is. And when we cost it out, we need to know standardization, recipes. We need to know the cost per portion to know, or the cost per serving to know how much we should be selling that for in order to make a profit. And then that goes back down to your marketing and sales strategy for the business. So, and then we moved on to identifying food pricing strategies, including understanding the different methods, calculating selling prices, and exploring the benefits of discounting as well. So I hope that's helped from the food and beverage in terms of the costing cycle. So thank you very much from Mr. Tan.